I signed my wife's family prenup while I was broke. After she cheated and I got rich, they told me to rip it up so she could take half. Hey everyone. Before we kick off today's video, I've got a favor to ask. We've noticed our channel isn't getting as much love lately, and subscribing is one of the easiest ways you can help us out. It's quick, free, and it means we can keep bringing you awesome content. Your support really means a lot, so let's work together to keep this channel growing. Thanks a bunch. Now, let's dive into the video. I just need to get this all out, not looking for comfort or advice right now. When I first met Melissa, I was pretty much just starting out. Had a basic job, a heap of student loans, and a tiny apartment shared with roommates. Melissa's family, though, was pretty well off, not flying around in private jets every week, but definitely comfortable. They owned properties, ran a local business, and lived in a big house in a fancy neighborhood. It was clear there was a financial gap between us. We dated for about a year, and everything seemed to be going great. But when we started talking about marriage, things got a bit more complicated. Melissa's parents, especially her dad, were really involved in her life decisions. They weren't rude, but they made it pretty clear that they were worried about my finances compared to theirs and Melissa's. They didn't outright call me broke, but it was kind of implied. They pointed out that Melissa was used to a certain lifestyle and had built their wealth carefully, so they wanted to make sure her financial future was secure, with a prenup as the solution. This wasn't just a suggestion, it was a must for them to support the wedding financially. They even insisted I use a lawyer they recommended to check out the prenup, claiming it was all fair. I knew this lawyer was probably more loyal to them, but they did say I could get my own lawyer if I wanted. Problem was, I was in my mid-20s, didn't know much about legal stuff, and couldn't afford a fancy lawyer to fight their terms. The lawyer they provided explained everything but didn't really help me negotiate. It was pretty clear, if we divorced, I wouldn't get any of Melissa's premarital assets, her inheritance, or any value increase in her separate property. Even stuff we got during the marriage that was tied to my work wouldn't be mine unless under very strict conditions. Alimony was either completely waived or super low and short term, just in case Melissa needed some temporary cash. I went through the document, it was all about keeping what's hers is hers, and what's mine is mine. With my current financial state, having no real assets, the idea of getting rich seemed far off. The pressure to sign was huge as the wedding plans rolled on, and Melissa seemed to accept the prenup as a necessary step for her family's peace of mind. I felt stuck. My options were to sign and get her family's blessing, or refuse and risk ending our relationship or marrying without their support, which would cause drama. So, I signed it. The early years of our marriage were pretty tight money-wise, which I expected. I stayed in my entry-level job while trying to find ways to earn more. Melissa worked part-time at first, then shifted to managing home stuff as my job got busier. The prenup didn't come up again, it was just filed away. I then focused hard on building something for myself since I wasn't thrilled with my corporate job's progress. I started a side hustle in tech, which took loads of time and whatever spare cash we had. Melissa took care of the house as we kept things fairly modest, driving old cars and living in a small house, and not relying on her family for financial help except for the occasional gift. My tech project started to pick up slowly. After years of hard work, learning, and adapting, I finally left my full-time job to dive into it fully. It was a risky move, one we talked about, because it meant no steady income for a while. Melissa supported the decision, although her family was worried about the lack of a regular paycheck. But I kept going, and the business gradually picked up speed. I discovered a niche, built a team, and reinvested profits, putting in the time and effort needed to grow it. So around the time we hit 5 years of marriage, our business was seriously taking off. It wasn't just about bringing in money, we were actually making a good profit, grabbing the attention of investors left and right. My stake in the company, along with some smart investments I made from our profits, started to add up to some serious cash. All this wealth was something I had built up from scratch since we got married, and it began to eclipse the financial standing of Melissa's family. It was kind of wild, I found myself being labeled as a millionaire by most standards. Our lifestyle started to reflect our new financial status even though we kept the exact numbers on the down low. We bought a bigger house in a nice neighborhood, not quite as fancy as the gated community where her folks live, but still pretty upscale. Plus, we traveled a lot more. Melissa stopped working altogether, she was fully focused on managing our growing household. This change in our dynamic was hard to miss. Melissa's parents, who had always been a bit skeptical of my finances, borderline snobbish, really, suddenly got much more interested in how my business was doing. They began including me in money talks, showering me with compliments about my business moves. The prenup they'd pushed for back when they thought I was broke? Yeah, it didn't come up at all. But, as my work life got busier and my wealth grew, things between Melissa and me started to hit a rough patch. I was all in with the business, while Melissa seemed to enjoy the perks but wasn't as connected with what I was doing. Our lives began to diverge. She had her own social scene and hobbies, mainly tied to our new lifestyle, while I was still deep into the business world. Conversations between us became more of a necessity, often about running the house or keeping up with social events. We seemed to have less affection and fewer shared goals. Then, about a decade into our marriage, I noticed Melissa acting differently. She was distant, always on her phone, and sometimes just not around when I expected her to be. When I tried to talk about it, she'd get all defensive or shrug it off. It wasn't an overnight thing but more like a cloud of suspicion formed by little odd behaviors. I pieced things together not because she told me, but through other means. Turns out, Melissa was seeing someone else, a guy she met through her new social network. He came from money, too, which seemed to play into her interest in him. The affair had been going on for a while. Once I found out, things escalated quickly. Her family, who had recently been all about my newfound wealth, reverted to their protective instincts. They found out about the affair and were suddenly laser-focused on Melissa's financial future, especially with a potential divorce looming. The guy she was with wasn't planning on a serious relationship or anything like that. He was married and lived out of state, which likely fueled her family's panic about Melissa's financial situation if we split. So, her dad reaches out, asking for a meeting, saying it was super urgent and all about the family's well-being. When I met him and Melissa's mom at their place, it wasn't exactly a fun chat. They acknowledged knowing about our marital issues and her thing with this other guy. After a bit of concerned talk, they quickly shifted gears to focus on the prenup. Her dad, who had been all about the prenup years ago, now said things had changed big time since it was signed. He pointed out my success and the wealth I'd built up, arguing that the prenup's original intent, to protect Melissa from marrying someone without means, was no longer valid. He suggested it would be fairer to ditch the prenup and go for a standard divorce if that's where we were headed. His angle was that Melissa should be entitled to half of everything since she had been a stay-at-home wife, backing my career by managing home life. He didn't bring up the affair while making his case. It was all about my wealth and how the prenup wasn't fair now that I had money. Melissa was there too, mostly staying quiet and letting her parents do the talking. So, here's the deal, she felt that our prenup was totally out of date and didn't really fit our lives anymore. She didn't seem sorry about the affair or worried about our marriage, nope, she was just dead set on getting a slice of the wealth I'd built up while we were hitched. It was clear she was ready to bail and be with this other guy, or at least wanted the freedom to do that, and she figured she deserved a hefty payday from me while at it, given my current success. When it came time to chat about this, I was pretty straightforward. I let them speak their piece, and then I made it clear that the prenup was a legit legal contract. We had it drawn up by lawyers, looked over by both our legal teams, and signed by Melissa and me with a full understanding of what it meant, including how it handled future assets. I reminded them that they were the ones who pushed for this prenup in the first place, mainly to protect Melissa's stuff because I was basically broke back then. The prenup was crafted for a situation exactly like this, where one of us ended up making it big during the marriage. It didn't have any loopholes for if I struck gold. I told them I'd been doing my part by working hard and providing, and I expected the agreement we signed to be respected. There was no way I was tearing up the prenup or agreeing to some new deal outside its terms. If we were headed for divorce, it would be with the prenup fully intact. Melissa and her folks were pretty shocked and angry. I guess they thought I'd cave under pressure, like maybe I'd feel obligated, scared of a fight, or trying to be overly nice. Her dad's vibe changed from trying to convince me to dropping hints about long court battles, public messiness, and hefty legal bills, hinting they'd keep me tangled up in court to try and kill the prenup. I stuck to my guns, though. I emphasized that all the terms of the agreement were laid out clearly, and I wasn't backing down. I had already talked to my own lawyer who specialized in prenups to make sure everything was solid. I got up, said the meeting was done, and bounced. Things really went downhill after that. Melissa filed for divorce, and her legal team, no doubt with a little guidance from her parents, immediately made it clear they were challenging the prenup. Their arguments were basically what her dad had hinted at before, saying the prenup was unfair since I was now loaded, that I somehow pressured Melissa into signing it, though her having a lawyer makes that tough to believe, and that the terms weren't fair to her now. That's when my legal dream team kicked into gear. We responded by asserting the prenup's rock-solid validity. We dug out all the paperwork from when we signed it, proving she had her own lawyer, plus statements from her parents backing the original agreement. We argued that my financial success was precisely what the prenup was meant to handle. It was all about future earnings and assets. We pointed out that Melissa knew exactly what she was signing and did it willingly. We didn't go into all the juicy details of the divorce but noted the affair as part of the bigger picture of why things fell apart, showing how she was just trying to cash in against the agreement. Legal stuff takes forever, and there were all these filings, motions, and required mediation that went nowhere because Melissa, egged on by her parents and lawyer, refused to accept the prenup. My lawyers dismantled every claim they made, showing that she had independent legal advice when she signed the prenup, that we disclosed our finances honestly at the time, and that future assets were part of the deal, something Melissa got with zero help from her. Trying to claim the prenup was grossly unfair due to changes in circumstances almost never flies. Just because one of us made it big doesn't cut it. The courts generally only toss prenups if one person is left in dire straits, which wasn't the case given Melissa's well-off family. Eventually, the court decided to focus on whether the prenup was legit before looking at dividing stuff or discussing alimony. During these hearings, it became apparent that Melissa trying to invalidate the prenup was a long shot. Her own past statements and her family demanding the prenup back then contradicted her claims of being pressured or that the deal was unfair when she signed it. My legal team laid out a pretty airtight case for keeping the prenup intact. When the prenup was challenged in court, it seemed like Melissa's legal team was scrambling to avoid a loss, but they stuck to their guns and wouldn't settle on the prenup's terms. My lawyers advised me to stay strong because the prenup was my ace in the hole, and it worked out in my favor. The judge backed the prenup completely, stating it was legit since we both had lawyers or the chance to hire them, we fully disclosed our assets, and the terms were fair when we signed it. Importantly, the court said that even though I had made more money since then, the prenup covered that too, so it didn't make it unfair in any way. When the dust settled, the prenup was enforced as is, shaping how the divorce played out. Melissa had initially agreed to waive most of her rights to my future earnings and any hefty alimony. Her lawyers tried to find loopholes or at least get her some support, but the prenup was pretty airtight. So, in the end, Melissa only got what she brought into the marriage plus a little short-term alimony, which was peanuts compared to what she or her family hoped for. She didn't get any slice of my business, no part of my investments, or any of the gains I made while we were married. All that wealth stayed with me, shielded by the prenup her folks had insisted on in the first place. This left Melissa in a tough spot, as she'd been a stay-at-home wife for years and hadn't built a career or her own source of income. She'd been living the high life, thanks to my success, but the prenup left her with hardly any claim to that after the split. So, with minimal assets, she found herself at a crossroads. Around the same time the divorce was wrapping up, her fling with another guy also fizzled out. Apparently, he wasn't planning on leaving his own wife, and once he saw that Melissa wasn't walking away with a big settlement, he lost interest and cut ties. Without him and without a financial cushion from the divorce, Melissa didn't have a lot of routes to explore. The big house we lived in was mine and stayed mine, so the lifestyle she enjoyed was suddenly out of reach. While her wealthy family could and likely did take her in, she was essentially starting fresh with not much to her name. Those same folks who had pushed for the prenup and its challenge had their assets well protected. I heard through mutual friends that she ended up back in her childhood room at her parents' mansion, without a job or independent means. Her attempt to swap the marriage for money and a new relationship didn't work out. As for me, I kept the wealth, the business, and the assets I'd worked hard for, but the chapter with Melissa was closed. Over 10 years together, with all its ups and downs, had come to an end. The whole divorce process, the legal wrangling, and dealing with her family's antics were exhausting. Melissa ended up broke and back at her parents'. Meanwhile, I was left alone with the financial empire I'd built. It's just how things unfolded, from the days of signing a prenup when I didn't have much, to creating substantial wealth, facing opposition from the very people who wanted the prenup, and then having it hold up in court. It's all wrapped up now, just the facts of what went down, and I needed to jot it down somewhere.